And that's where my mom and dad ran some sled dogs, and they raced in the Bear Grease in Duluth, Minnesota. You might have heard of that. And then and maybe studied about a little bit. And so that was a really huge opportunity for me this year, and it was quite an amazing trip. And it took my team 13 days and a little over 4 hours to go, about 1,000 miles from Anchorage to Nome. And it was a really interesting year this year because we didn't get very much snow in Alaska, so we had
So she will cut in and out.
Gorge and Farewell Burn were pretty crazy, and a lot of mushers got injured in different ways. But our team did well.
It's just her connection.
But when it was all over, it actually seemed like it went pretty fast. So we didn't get too cold. It was really actually nice weather as far as winter in Alaska. Is there like a wind feedback? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you. There is a little wind
feedback.
feedback.
I feel like it's getting windy. We're at the beach today. Okay. We're at the beach today. Okay, I'll get inside the. Expected it to be, but it was a lot rougher in places because this year I know you guys got a lot of snow.
Yes, we did get a lot of snow. Monica, you are cutting in and out, but yes,
it was
we did
actually
get a lot of snow.
brown dirt that we were.
There's that lag.
Season for running the dogs and trying to train. We actually had to travel really far to be able to get the miles that we needed to train for the Iditarod. Holding the race is normal. And it was very difficult for the main reason of not having snow, and there was a lot of glare ice, and the dogs had dogs. So I guess if we can do any questions, we could try that. Hopefully we'll have good enough reception to be able to understand each other.
Yep. Come on up. Let me get in front of the camera. You're good.
What was it like training for the Iditarod?
So it could take just a little bit for her to get there. Yeah.
Just, I mean, maybe it would be better to hear than
Yeah.
see.
We can't even. Here, I'll.
Oh man.
did you guys hear from her so far? What did she say about the Iditarod? Mary, did you hear something from her?
Well, I heard that she maybe lived in Wisconsin.
Carly? Right.
There.
I heard her say too that a lot of mushers were injured, sounds like. And it must have been because of the lack of snow, maybe?
I think that's what she said.
Yeah. Michael?
She said that she thought the Iditarod went pretty fast and you stayed warm.
Yeah. That's probably not something most mushers say, that it was a warm journey. Mitchell?
It was like clear ice.
I think we might just call it. Can you still hear us, Monica, or? So she's typing it. Okay. Well, we tried.
Thank you.
I can hear you now.
Really?
This might be working better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It seems like there was an improvement. I can see and hear a bit better now. So
So do you want to re-ask your question?
What was it like training for the Iditarod?
okay, I heard that question. What was it like training for the Iditarod? Well, it was a long year. We pretty much spent from September on until March training for the Iditarod, and it was difficult because of the lack of snow. So where I live is on the Kenai Peninsula, and it's actually south of Anchorage, and it's not nearly as cold as most people think there.
Should we maybe see if we can get one more question?
More than 500 miles from where we live. So we were on the road a lot, and it made it quite difficult to train. But we were able to get enough miles so that the dogs were in shape enough to make it all the way.
Cool.
Did you ever encounter an animal like a deer or a moose?
Did I ever encounter an animal? That's a good question. I didn't see anything real big. There's a lot of moose having a standoff on the trail, which would be scary. So it was nothing like out of the ordinary in that department. We don't really have deer in Alaska in the mainland, so that isn't an issue. There's one part of the trail where there's buffalo, but we didn't really see any because it was dark when we went through that section. And then in the middle parts or the coast, there were a lot of fox, little Arctic foxes. We saw them, and a lot of birds, but nothing too big or scary in terms of animals.
That's good, right? Dolan, you want to come on up?
Nice and loud.
What do you do if you get lost or lose your dogs?
That's a good question. What do you do if you get lost or lose your dogs? Well, two different questions there, because you can get lost with your dogs. That is what has happened to me on several races. It didn't happen in Iditarod this year, which was a good thing, because that would be quite scary. But if you get off the trail, what you have to do is just try finding the trail, turning yourself around and going in another direction until you can find the trail again. And sometimes it can take a long time, depending on if you're in a very remote area or not. You maybe can find people to ask and for directions, and maybe there aren't people. But yeah, if you found a few reasons for yourself because you're going a lot slower and you might not have your survival gear with you if you've lost your sled too, and so that's a scary thing. Again, fortunately, I didn't have that problem on the Iditarod this year, but some people did. And number one concern is getting your dogs back. So, whether it be another musher or a snowmobiler or having anybody help you to get back to your team and catch the dog are very important things to, first of all, avoid having happen to you, especially losing your team. Hang on tight and don't fall asleep and all those kinds of things. And then if it does happen, doing whatever it takes to retrieve your team.
What made you interested in dog sledding?
Oh, that's a good question. What made me interested in dog sledding? Well, like I had mentioned, my parents were dog mushers in Wisconsin. And so when I was growing up, I was around the dogs. And it was just kind of a part of the lifestyle then. But then when I was older and on my own, I realized that I missed it, and when I was going to college and whatnot, I wasn't able to have a dog, so I really loved the dogs and couldn't live without them. So that I was only planning to come up to Alaska for maybe 1 year or a short amount of time to just try it out, but that was over 4 years ago, so and I'm still here. So dogs, if anybody has dogs, they know how much you can get attached to them, and that's
Okay, go to the next one.
What is your favorite part about the Iditarod?
What was my favorite part about the Iditarod? Well, I liked most of it. I liked, being on the trail and making new friends. I ran a lot of the race with Lisbeth. I don't know, maybe you had followed the race that much, but she had been a friend before the race, but we became really good friends on the race, and we traveled a lot of the trail together, and so that was a lot of fun. And really getting to the finish line was really fun because your goal has been fulfilled. You've done a great accomplishment at that point. The end is really cool, but all of it was awesome, and the start was really exciting. It's very cool to have everybody so excited for you and for something like this event. So all in all, I think it overall was all fun.
How many dogs do you have? What's the name of your lead dog, and who is your favorite dog?
Uh, 50 dogs total, so that's quite a few, and that includes we have 13 that are puppies this year, so they're about 10 months old, and then our racing dogs, there's probably about 30, maybe 32 of those, and then we have a few that are in starting retirement or just training puppies and whatnot. They were actually all girls. So we had Polly, Gabbana, and Squall, and they were the smallest, littlest dogs on the team, and they all did a lot of leading, and some of them even led by themselves, so single leader, which is kind of difficult to do, and they led into snowstorms, and I was incredibly proud of them. And Polly was the only one who had been on Iditarod before, so she kind of knew what was coming, but the other ones, 2 years old, so that's pretty young too for leaders. And I had a young team overall. And I'll tell you all the names of my dogs on the Iditarod team. I have to do a little thinking here, but I had the ones in the back. We had Bagheera, Baloo, and Mowgli, and Cash. And then we had Ziggy, and Picante, and Libra, and Winston. Of course, I said Squall and Polly. And so, is anybody counting? Let's see, I wonder if I forgot anybody. I said Ziggy, Libra. That might have been all the ones that finished, 14 that finished the race with me. So, that was pretty cool.
Did you drop any dogs in the race?
Yes, I did have to drop 2 dogs in the race because I started with 16. That's what everybody starts with, and then finished up with 14. So I ended up having to drop Pepsi, she was a leader in 100 miles, and she did real well, but she started to get tired, and she had a bit of a sore front leg, and then she just didn't want to keep going with being a little bit sore and a little bit older. So I ended up dropping her, and then I had to drop Smokey 300 miles into the race at Nikolai, and he must have got somehow stepped wrong or somewhat, because he ended up having a limp after the real rough section of trail. It was about 50 miles of incredibly rough roots and stumps and sticks, and we fared quite well, but Smokey must have he was a very big dog, probably the heaviest dog in the team, about 65 pounds, and so that can be a little bit more harder on a dog if the trail is rough. So I ended up having to drop him because he ended up having a little bit of a limp too. But both of them were totally fine by the time I got done with the race.
What's the scariest thing that's ever happened to you when you're racing in the Iditarod?
Just to make sure it's not
That's a good question. What's the scariest thing that happened to me on Iditarod? There was a couple scary on it, and it was glare ice. And there was a snowmobile tipped over upside down in the middle of the trail, which was very narrow with trees on both sides. On the steepest, iciest part, it had flipped when they were trying to go up it. So if that tells you anything about how bad the conditions were, they were really bad. So we had to somehow I was able to the snow machine kind of through the woods down this hill, and we were tying the guy on the machine, although I was very mad at him to start with because I didn't think he should be blocking the trail, but it ended up that he helped me kind of get around, and so he brought my dogs around the snow machine. I had to tie off going down the hill, but it turned out we got him stopped and got back on the sled and kept going. But that was really scary. But there were many scary moments, actually. They were over really quickly, and you just kind of had to, use your best judgment in those situations. And fortunately, things went well for me, and I kind of got lucky. And a lot of other mushers had. I don't know how much you were following, like I said, but a lot of other mushers in the race this year had probably even a lot scarier moments that maybe didn't go quite as well as mine.
How did you sleep knowing someone could pass you at any moment?
How did I sleep? Oops. Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. How did I sleep? Well, I wasn't really concerned with being competitive in this race. I finished in 47th place out of 49 people that finished. So, and that was actually on purpose. I wasn't trying to win the race. I wasn't really thinking about who's going to pass me and stuff like that. I was just concerned with making sure that my dogs, lucky on my part, but I was able to take about 8 hours at every checkpoint, so I could sleep 3.5 to 4 if I was efficient, and that was a luxury. That was probably more sleep than most mushers got. Because I was in the back of the pack and taking my time. But we didn't go all that much slower on the trail, but we just took more rest at the checkpoints. And the reason I wanted to do that was for the young, and then I would have to worry about teams passing me. But that wasn't really on my radar this year.
Do you have plastic on the bottom of your sled, and if you do, how many times did you have to change it?
That's a good question. Yep, I did have runner plastic on the bottom of my sled, and I actually used 2 different sleds. One sled that I took from the start all the way through to McGrath, so we had put all plastic runners on, so it didn't have wood or aluminum. The whole runner was made out of plastic, and then you also put a piece of plastic on top of that to slide so you can change it. And that one I didn't change it at all. I just went the whole way with the same set until I switched out my sled to a little bit faster sled. I changed the runners to put new runners on after they get scratched up and stuff.
This is our last question, so did you like doing the race, and if you did, would you keep doing it?
Well, a lot of people have been asking me if I'm going to do it again, so I'm thinking that is encouragement. I did like the race. I had a really good time for my first year. So I feel really fortunate that even though it was a difficult race, I still had a lot of fun. I had a good experience, and I think I, fulfilled my goal in getting there with a healthy, large team. Of course, I would like to get a little faster and maybe be a little more competitive. And I think the more competitive you get, sometimes the less fun it gets. Mainly because you aren't sleeping nearly as much and you're really having to push yourself. And it's especially hard on the musher because the dogs can sleep the whole time they're at the checkpoint, but the mushers getting their food ready and getting, just there's a lot of work to be done at the checkpoint. So you're probably only sleeping maybe 1 hour. So I think it would be really difficult to go from the level that I did it to maybe the level that I would like to be at. But I don't know if you have any idea what it costs to actually do Iditarod, but it probably costed me about $25,000 to $30,000 this year, and that's not being competitive. So to be on a competitive level, it's going to be even more. So it's going to be interesting to see how everything kind of comes together in the next year, to see if I can get it together to do it again. But I think the dogs would like to, and that's the whole idea, is to get the dogs to have more experience of going down the trail, and the more they do.
We say thank you and then say goodbye.
Bye.
So everyone go. Thank you, Monica.